Ascent, man, I didn't want to stop the time of worship, so that was awesome. Just kind of seeing what the Holy Spirit was doing. I hope that He said something to you and that you lean into that today. We're so excited that you're with us today. My name is Andrew Wingo. If we have not met, one of the pastors here. And before we jump into the message, I just want to kind of recap last week. I hope you guys enjoyed last week. That was one of the most funnest isn't a word, but that's what I'm going to say. The funnest times I've had at the Ascent, and it was just being able to have the different stations to be able to pray and to just spend some time, kind of like we did today, just thanking God for what it is that He's done in our lives personally, and then also through the church as well, and then being able to take communion together, and it was not the little other communion that we normally do, and so that was really nice. But then it was cool to be able to serve the person that was in front of you or and behind you, and that was really cool. And then being over here next to the chalkboards and just really praying about what it is that we want to see God do this year. That we are intentional about praying, because so often we can just throw up prayers, and Jesus warns us against this. He says, don't just throw up empty words. Don't just throw things up there for praying, just for praying's sake. And so what was cool about last week is that we got to write down and saying, God, I'm believing you to do this. I believe that you're going to do this. And what I like to tell the people as they're getting ready to walk up is that we serve such a big God. That oftentimes are what we think are big prayers are so small in comparison, and God's saying, no, there's so much more that I want to do for you and through you and in you. And so what my challenge is for us is that we don't let last week just be last week. That we continue that on, that you take your little card and you've put, I hope you've put it somewhere that you can see regularly, that you can be praying for regularly, that you've shared it with someone else. And if you need another one of those cards, we can get you one of those. If you weren't here last week, you can find us after the service, and we can walk you through kind of what all that was and what that looks like. But it was amazing. It was a wonderful, wonderful time, and it was a blessing to get to be a part of. Today we're excited. We're starting a brand new series called No Offense. And this is just really being able to kind of walk in freedom of being offended. Has your spouse ever had a dream about you? And it's not like one of those kind of dreams like where like your wife or someone says, hey, I dreamt about you last night, and you're like, go on. You know, like it's not one of those kind of dreams. Like it's maybe you guys haven't had those dreams before, but it's one of those dreams where you've done something to them in your dream, and they are mad at you. You guys ever had one of those? You guys ever had one of those kind of dreams about your spouse? Or maybe not your spouse, but someone else, where it was so real. Like one time I was sleeping, and I kid you not, I woke up to the tension in the room, and I opened my eyes, and Sarah is just staring at me. I'm like, hey, you okay? Nothing. And so part of me is like, is she having like paralysis? Like where, like is she like just try to blink and I'll wake you up, you know, like whatever's going on, or maybe she's possessed, you know, but maybe it wasn't. And she's just staring at me, and I'm like, are you okay? And she looks at me and she says, I'm so mad at you. And I'm like, for what? She's like, for what you did. And then she turns over, and I'm like racking my brain, like, what did I do yesterday? Like, what happened? And so then I'm like, hey, you want to revisit me real quick? Why don't you come back over here? Like, what are you talking about? She's like, what you did in my dream. I'm like, what? I'm like, that didn't happen. Like, I was like, that wasn't real. And she's like, you cheated on me. And I was like, but I didn't. Like, she's like, no. She's like, but it was so real. And I'm like, right. Except the reality, because it didn't happen. Like it was not real. And no, like she just could not. Like I mean, like later on that day, like she's still looking at me, and like I'll look at her, and she just like looks down. I'm like, it didn't happen. Like it was not real, but she could not shake it. And it was one of those things where it was like the offense was real inside of her head, even though it was not a real thing. And so that just kind of lived deep down inside of her for a while and everything. And obviously she trusts me, and I've never cheated on her. But in her dream, I'm a dirtbag. So I don't understand. But we want to talk about offense. We want to talk about what offense is. Have you ever had anybody come up to you and say, hey, no offense, but then followed by something that was completely offensive? And you're just kind of like, well, what am I supposed to do with that now? And so how do we navigate and how do we walk through offense? Did you guys know that being offended is a choice? We can choose to be offended. And we can choose to not be offended. We can choose to live life offended, or we can choose to say, you know what, I'm going to live my life. I'm going to wake up every day, and I'm going to be unoffendable. There is nothing that is going to offend me today, and that is not going to stay with me. But what we need to be able to do is we need to be able to identify what those things are, because there's a difference between something that is offensive and being offended. All right, there's two differences between those things. So there's a difference. Offensive is something that happened. All right, offended is the reaction to what happened. Offense is what happened. Offended is the reaction to what happened. All right, there are things in this world that are offensive. Sin is offensive. That sin is offensive. How people treat you can be offensive. How people talk to you can be offensive. There's shows that me and Sarah will not watch because they are offensive. And that we just don't want to kind of fill our minds with those things. The Cardinals jerseys, those are offensive. The Green Bay Packers jerseys, those are offensive. All right, and Dan is not back there, so he cannot take my microphone down. So those are things that are offensive. Offenses, again, is something that was done to you. Offended is saying, I will never get over it. All right, offense is you did this. Offended is I will never get over it. And so it's not a sin to have something offend you. But if it's not dealt with, if offense is not dealt with and it just continues to linger, continues to stay, then it grows into sin. And it can cause you to think differently. It can cause you to do things that you know you shouldn't do, say things you know you shouldn't say, look at people the way that you shouldn't. Have you ever been so offended by somebody that when you see that person, something just triggers inside of you? When someone even says that person's name, your blood starts to boil. And then you start getting to a place where you recount and react or just think about all the things that person did to you, or that situation did to you, or that thing that someone said, or the thing that person did not say. And you hold on to that offense. So we can choose to let that go, or we can choose to hold on to it. Jesus wants us to surrender those things. He wants us to let go. And so what we're going to talk about today is how do we navigate through this choice? There's a spirit of offense. And again, if it's not dealt with, then it's going to continue to grow. So think of a seed. All right, when you plant a seed, you water that seed and you want it to grow and you want it to produce fruit, right? And what was something I say a lot of times is bitter roots produce bitter fruit. And so if you do not de-root the offense, if you do not de-root those things, it's going to grow into something that's bad. But how we foster offense, how we water offense is there's a couple different things that we can do. One, gossip. Gossip is one way of watering the seed of offense. Gossip is an absolute killer. Now, there's a difference between gossip and venting. All right, gossip is ill-intentioned, mean-spirited much of the time. Venting, on the other hand, is done to express frustration about a person or a problem. Venting is therapeutic. Venting is something that is necessary because if you continue to hold all those things in, then eventually you're going to explode. Like if you just hold in all of the problems, if you hold in all of the frustrations and you don't say anything about them, at some point you're going, and maybe husbands, you can experience some of this stuff where like maybe like you just said the wrong thing once and your wife's like, blah, or vice versa. It doesn't have to go the other way, but you're like, hey, you've been holding in some stuff for a while. Like maybe let's let those things out. Venting is very, very good, but venting needs to be done in an appropriate way. For me, venting, I vent to my wife. I let my wife, she's my most trusted person. I trust her with everything. And I know that if I'm frustrated with someone or something, I can take it to her. And she'll oftentimes either be a good sounding board, or she'll be someone to say, hey, you need to get over it. You need to fix these things. Dane and Jeremy are a couple people that are really important for me to kind of take some venting concerns to. My small group. If you're not in a small group, I really encourage you to join a small group. And if you're saying, I don't know how to join one, start one. We'd love to help you get one going, but those are really important. Those are really great moments and opportunities for you to share things that are troubling you, that are hard. I've vented a lot to our small group. What turns venting into gossip is when I start telling the mailman. When I start telling the grocery store person, or I start telling a friend that I want that person to think the same way as me. I want them to be offended right alongside with me. And then what happens is I start getting the kind of this witch hunt, this thing that's going, and it absolutely just kills morale, and it kills what Jesus is trying to do. When we take our offense and we water it with gossip, that just continues to grow. Another thing that is a big one is revisiting, just continuing to revisit. I've told a lot of people off in my head, all right? Those shower conversations or those drive conversations where I'm like, and another thing, like where I just let the person have it inside of my head, and then when I'm around that person, I'm like, hey, no, we're best friends, just continuing to revisit. Continue to go back and forth. Okay, well, this is when this person hurt me. This is when this person did this, and I just can't get over it, so I'm just going to keep coming back to it. Because when we keep revisiting, what ends up happening is that we start to recreate. And this is important. When we continue to revisit our offense, revisit the thing that was offended to us, we just keep playing it over and over. There's the danger to start recreating what happened. And then it's the lines are blurred, because then you're like, okay, did this really happen, or is this just something that I felt and that I thought really happened? But what we are needing to do is we need to surrender those things. And the big thing is we need to invite Jesus into that moment. So instead of just continuing to revisit, getting angry, when you revisit it next, say, Jesus, where were you when this happened? Because I promise you he was there. Because he promises that he's going to be there. And so instead of revisiting and recounting and just getting more and more mad and more offended, will you say, Jesus, will you come with me to this moment when I took offense to this situation or this person? And will you speak into it? Will you help me to see the truth? Let the truth be revealed. Help me to see what I cannot see because I've been blinded by offense. The other thing is grudges. Grudges help water the tree of offense. Holding on to grudges. This person hurt me, this person did this, and so now I've got resentful, unwilling, and I'm not able to give or grant or allow something in this person because I'm holding on to this grudge. This person doesn't deserve it. This person did this to me, and so I've got this grudge against this person because of how much they offended me. We drive by the old Northwoods building a lot. And if you've noticed, they're doing a lot of really great things. And it's part of me that's like, man, why do we ever think to do any of the stuff they're doing? This looks really, really nice. And there's like this really big playground thing. I don't know if you've seen it, but as we're driving by, I was like, oh, guys, look how cool that playground looks. And I was like, I want to play on that. And Adam was like, I want to play on that too. And I was like, let's play on that someday. And then Olivia from the back was like, I will never play on that playground. And I'm like, why? And she's like, because they stole our church. Easy, baby. All right. So I was like, let's just calm down. And so then we try like, no, we love what we're doing right now. They didn't steal our church. It didn't happen maybe the way that we wanted it to happen, but it's totally fine. God's doing a lot of really amazing things. And I'm like, yeah, we love the YMCA. It's really good. And she's like, I will never play on that playground. I was like, then you can come with us and you can sit while we play, because I'm letting you know one of the pastors of that church that got displaced cannot wait to play on that playground. So you got to deal with it. And I know that's a silly thing, but think about it. How many of you have the same kind of feeling that my daughter has? Because it is frustrating. It's annoying. it's difficult. Or even think about those other things that maybe someone's done, and you think to yourself, and you make this vow, you make this covenant in your head saying, I will never blank. Jesus does not want us making those vows. He does not want us to just lay those stakes in the ground. Again, he wants us to be able to say, God, I need you to speak into this. Holy Spirit, I need help with this because me alone, I can't do this by myself. And Jesus died for us to be free. He didn't die for us to be continuing to hold on to things that we're not meant to hold on to. And so the last thing, and really this is the fertilizer that helps the seed grow. The other things are the water. This is the fertilizer, and it's pride. It's pride. Pride says, you did this to me. You offended me. Do you know who I am? And I will never get over this because of how much you have wronged me. And it causes you to not to be able to see. Or we were talking to the youth a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about like retaliation, and I was like, what causes, what situations would you show peace and understanding, and when would you show retaliation? And a lot of the students said, it just depends on the situation. And I was glad that they said that, because that's the wrong answer. But I feel like that's what we always go to, is we say, you know what, it depends on the situation, how somebody has wronged me. If they've harmed me a lot, then I'm definitely going to retaliate. If someone's really offended me, then yeah, I want to offend them back. I want them to be taken down the same place as me. We have to remember what it is that Jesus came to do. And what was it that Jesus preached? Think about that moment when Jesus is up on the cross. When he's up on the cross, and people have taken his clothes and they're selling it now. They put a crown of thorns on his head. They just got done beating him. They're mocking him. They're spitting on him. They're cursing him. They're saying all of these things to him and at him, making fun of him. They're saying, oh, if you are the Son of God, just get yourself off the cross. And then he hears it from the two next to him saying, okay, well, if not just you, but take us down as well. What is it that Jesus says to them in that moment? He says, forgive them. Because he knows who God is, and God at one point could be like, forget it, boom, destroyed. But Jesus is pleading and begging God. He's saying, forgive them, because they don't get it. They don't understand what it is they're doing here. Forgive them. Now let me ask you, has anyone wronged you worse than Jesus? I mean, not Jesus wronging you, but has anyone ever wronged you the way that people wronged him? And for Jesus to be able to look at people who are literally saying, I want you dead, and are doing it, to be able to look at them with grace and mercy and say, you're forgiven. You don't get it. Or are we quick to retaliate and allow the spirit of offense to take hold in our hearts? Because here's the thing. God's called us to great and amazing things. Like we talked about last week with the chalkboards. There's a lot of amazing things that we want to see God do. But our offense and us being offended can prevent God from working in our lives. The offense and the offendedness that we carry with us prevents God from doing a work that he's called to do in our lives, because we're still holding on to this. We're still holding on to anger. We're still holding on to hatred. And that's the complete opposite of Jesus. In Jesus, it says in Galatians, it says you can't do both. You can't live here and live here as well. You have to choose. And so we have the ability to choose if we're going to live offended or if we're going to let those offenses go. Next week, we're going to talk about forgiveness. It's going to be very important. Unforgiveness is a cancer that grows inside of us until we're destroyed. We have to forgive because Jesus forgave us. And then the following week, we're going to talk about reconciliation. What does it look like to reconcile? Maybe with God, with relationships, but to ultimately not own what's not ours to own. But today, in the remainder of the time that I have with us, what I want to talk about is the ability to step into who God's called us to be able to walk out the life that God's called us to walk out. Because again, God has a plan and a purpose for each and every one of us. But if we're too busy living in the grudges, living in the hurt, living in the pain, because again, remember, what do hurt people do? They hurt people. When people have hurt you, you hurt other people back. And so how can we walk in the freedom that Jesus provides appropriately? In Mark chapter 6, it's a very small passage. There's this moment where Jesus he just got done healing a bunch of people. He calmed the storm there and brought peace to the ocean. He cast out a demon, many demons in this man, and did a lot of really amazing things. And it says this in verse 6. It says, and he went away and came to his hometown, and his disciples followed. And on the Sabbath he began to teach in the synagogue. And many heard him and were astonished, saying, "Where did this man get these things? What is the wisdom given to him? How are such mighty works done by his hands? Is not this the carpenter, the son of Mary, the brother of James and Joseph and Judas and Simon? And are not his sisters here with us?" And check this out. And they took offense at him. And they took offense at him. And so they're hearing all of the things that Jesus is saying, hearing all the things that he's doing. And they think about all the things that they'd heard him do. They're seeing what he's doing right now, and they're like, we're just blown away. We're blown away by how he's teaching and what it is that he's saying and how he's saying it. But wait a minute, he's doing this on the Sabbath. This kind of seems weird. This doesn't seem right. We're not supposed to be doing that. And I'm pretty sure his dad made me a chair. And now he's talking about how his dad's like, it's God, and these things just don't make any sense. And so when they walked in with belief, and over time, with the things that they're hearing and the things that they're saying, and they're allowing this situation to get into their heads, they start getting filled with unbelief. And then they start getting offended by the things that he's saying. They start taking offense about the things that he's talking about, the things that he's preaching, and things that he's doing. And it says, and they were filled with offense with him. And they were offended. There's this tension that they were experiencing. And now they were completely shut off from anything that Jesus wanted to say. So that's what we hear about in Mark. In Luke, it goes a little step further. They get to the point where they're so mad at what Jesus is saying that they say to each other, like, let's just kill him right now. And so a group of people kind of just circle in around him, and they're getting ready to kill him. Why? Because they're offended at what he's saying, how it's disrupting what they're wanting to do. Here's the thing. Jesus came to disrupt our lives. But these people were so offended about what Jesus was saying and what Jesus was doing, they were blind now to be able to hear anything that Jesus wanted to say with them. Jesus came to his hometown and had such a plan and a purpose for those people, but they wanted nothing to do with it because they couldn't get past their own offense. They couldn't get past the grudge and the feeling that they had inside of it. And it says this, and Jesus said to them, "A prophet is without honor except in his hometown and among his relatives and in his own household. And he could do no mighty work there, except he laid his hands on a few sick people and healed them. And he marveled because of their unbelief." Did you catch this? Jesus could not do what Jesus came to do because they were offended. He says, I could stand up here and say anything, and you wouldn't hear it because of what you've already decided inside of your heart. Because of what you've already decided. And so now the plan that Jesus had for this city, they couldn't do anything. He could do nothing, and he still was able to just lay a couple hands. Like he says that he laid some hands on some people and he healed them, and that was really amazing. But think about the more that could have happened in that city. in his hometown with the people that he loves more than anybody in this world, they would not allow Jesus to do what Jesus came to do because they were carrying grudges, because they were offended, because they were filled with offense. Offense blinds us, and it prevents us from walking out and living the way that Jesus wants to live. Somebody wrote revival on those boards. If you wrote revival, but you're not allowing Jesus to revive what is inside of your heart, that's not going to happen. People ask for freedom, but if you're not able to allow Jesus to take that away from you, you're just going to be stuck in your misery. You're going to be stuck in what Jesus is trying to take from you. In order to be free from it, you have to hand it over to him. And so what I want us to do right now is I want us to think about the thing. To think about the grudge, to think about the thing that was so offensive to us. The thing that person said, the thing that person did. And I'm not talking about somebody who cuts you off, who offended you that way. Because here's the big thing. In 1912, April 14th, you know what happened on April 14th, 1912? Yep, someone got it back there. The Titanic sank. The Titanic sank because it hit an iceberg, and the people who were up in the crow's nest, this is all I'm getting from James Cameron, but the people that were up in the crow's nest, they saw an iceberg that was standing 100 feet out of the water. 100 feet out of the water. They saw it, and they crashed into it. But here's the thing. Whereas 100 feet above the water, it was 400 feet below the water. The stuff on the top is not what sank the Titanic. It's everything that was below the surface. What was below the surface caused a big hole, and then Leonardo DiCaprio died. And this is true. So with that, a person who cuts you off, the person who says just that one thing to you, that's the tip of the iceberg. That's what's on top of the surface. Jesus is saying, let's deal with what's below. Let's deal with what's underneath. There is some hurt in this room. And the thing that stinks is I'm sure that there's Christians who did it, who hurt you. And you have no clue what your purpose is. You have no clue what the plan that God has for you is, because you can't let go of what someone else said or what someone else did, that you're forgetting what the one someone did for you. And that was die and raised to life to take that from you so you can be with him forever. And so what I want us to do now is I want us to go after the iceberg so it does not sink you. Go after the thing that's below the surface that maybe only God knows. And so right now, what I want us to do is I want us to kind of put our hands out, if that's not weird for you. Because again, this is a posture of surrender. This is also, but I'm not making anybody do that. But this is a posture of surrender. This is saying, Jesus, all that I have is yours. All that I have is yours, and I want you to have it. And that includes pain. That includes gossip. That includes pride. That includes anger. That includes hurt. That includes offense. And you giving that over to him. And so in this moment, if we can close our eyes, can we just say, God, will you take me back? Take me back to that moment. Take me back to that thing that person said. Take me back to that thing that person did. Take me back to the moment when I allowed my pride to get in the way of your humility. Would you take away whatever is stopping me from experiencing you? Because the stuff that's up on the surface, that is not what sank the Titanic. That is not what's trying to sink me right now. So would you show me, Jesus, what it is I'm to let go of? Bring that person to my mind. Bring that moment before my eyes. Just take a moment and get there. Take a moment and allow Jesus to show you what you need to hear or to see, and what you need to hear, to be able to know that He is there with you. And I'm ready to let this go. I'm ready to surrender it over. Just picture Jesus' face and picture His hands as you take what has offended you, taking this deep-rooted offense and handing it over to Him. And just saying, Jesus, I'm ready to give this to you. I'm ready to, because I want to see revival in this city. I want to see revival in myself. I want to be free of this. I don't want to hold on to this anymore, because I want to step into the purpose that you've called me to step into. I want to be the man who you've called me to be. I want to be the woman that you've called me to be. I want to be the person, God, that you expect me to be. And I know that as I'm holding on to these grudges, as I'm holding on to this offense, I know that it's like walking with cement blocks on my feet, and I'm ready to take those shoes off, and I'm ready to walk freely in your freedom, in your grace. And so would you forgive me as I repent of holding on to this grudge, as I hold on to this unforgiveness. Would you just free that person from the dungeons of my soul, of my heart, and allow them to walk out in freedom as I experience your freedom? Because you promised me, Jesus, that as I come to you, all who come to you who are weak and weary, that you will get rest. And so as we surrender our offense and our offendedness, would you just fill us with your rest? Would you fill us with your peace? And help us to walk in the freedom that you've called us to walk in. To live each day unoffendable. Give us rhino skin. For as the enemy shoots those darts and throws those spears at us, that they would just bounce off, that it would not be able to penetrate our hearts, because that heart belongs to you, and we have fully surrendered it to you. And with our hands still out, Father, whatever you want us to receive, would you just fill our hearts? Would you just fill our souls, fill our hands with what it is that you want us to know? Fill it with grace. Help us to look at the people who have offended us the same way that you look at us, because, God, I'm pretty sure we offend you every single day. But you can still look at us and say, forgive them. You are forgiven because you don't know what you're doing. We love you, Jesus, and we thank you for who you are and what you've called us to be. Help us to walk in your deliverance, Jesus. We love you, and we praise you.
Jesus, you are mine, from death to life, from dark to light. Jesus, you show me what freedom is. You call my name, you broke my shame. Oh, Jesus, you are my deliverance, from death to life, from dark to light. Oh, Jesus, you show me what freedom is, and you call my name. Oh, you broke my shame, 'cause you are my deliverance. You are my deliverance. Hey, you are my deliverance.
God, we thank you. We thank you that you do not hold grudges. We thank you that you just get to the source. You get to the source of our pain. You get to the source of our confusion. You get to the source of our hurt. And so, Jesus, I pray that you would just speak into our lives. Help us to experience your freedom. And help us to be able to walk in that freedom because we are no longer holding on to the offense that people have had against us, that they've done to us, that we've held on to for so many years. And I pray, Father, as we leave this building today, or anyone who's watching online, as we leave today, that wherever we go, we can feel so much lighter because we're not holding on to it anymore. God, we love you. We praise you. And we pray this in your precious and holy name. Let's give God some praise, huh? I want to say, again, there is some hurt in this room. And a lot of time that hurt didn't happen overnight. It might not end in a night. And so if you need prayer, we would love to pray with you. We would love to go after those things with you. Again, find safe people to be able to talk to those things about and come up with a solution. And we'd love to pray with you. So if we can do that, please come and we'll pray with you. I got just a few announcements for us as we get ready to leave. Again, thank you guys so much for being here today and checking us out, and all of you guys online. I just want to thank you all who call the Ascent home. We can't do what we do here without you guys, so again, thank you so much for all that you do and how you give. And there's a lot of really amazing things that we're wanting to do that God's calling us to do, and we can't do that without you. So thank you so much for how you give and your offerings as well. Next week, we are going to continue this series, and so we would love for you to be able to come and be a part of that again. It's about forgiveness, and so this week, to really be praying through what is it that we need to be free from, and I got a couple challenges for you guys. If you guys want to stand, I'll give you these challenges, and then we'll leave. Challenge number 1. Start each day by saying, I choose today to not be offended by anything or anyone. It is a choice to be offended. So, I choose today to not be offended by anything or anyone. Challenge number 2. What are the seeds of offense that I need to stop watering in my life? God, would you reveal to me the gossip? Would you reveal to me the revisiting over and over and over? Would you get rid of the grudges? And would you help me to submit pride? Again, that is, what are the seeds of offense that I need to stop watering in my life? And as God reveals those things, challenge number 3, as God reveals those things to you, spend some time repenting. Each day this week, repent of how you've allowed offense and offendedness to take over your life. And submit those things over to Him. Ask Him for forgiveness for where it's taken you. And ask, where does He want you to go now? Sound good? Yes? All right. Love you guys. Have a great day.